Welcome again to another episode of Burnout and Beyond. I am your host, Victor Bartley, and we are here for another conversation with leaders in various industries about the impact that burnout has had on their life, what they're seeing in their industry. Not only that, but just about well being and wellness for life and life alignment. So today I am overjoyed and thrilled to have Pierre Quinn, who will tell you about himself in just a moment. Pierre, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Victor, man, it's a pleasure to hang out with you in this space. I'm such a big believer in what you're doing and excited to share part of my story today.
Man, awesome, awesome, awesome. Just before you tell us, before you introduce yourself a little further, I got to throw in a little extra sauce on there because you're not just a guest, but you are my first coach in the public speaking arena. And just again, thank you for all that you poured into me and that you continue to contribute to the work that I'm doing. So, man, if you're on the elevator and you're with someone, give us that quick 30-second, that 6 second, or however
Yeah.
you want to briefly share who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So on my business card, I know some people still carry business cards today. On my business card, the title I listed is People and Culture Strategist. And the reason why I put that on my business card is because much of my work deals with leaders and leadership and teams, but it really comes down to people, the people that make up an organization, and then the environment that they are fostering based on their relationships with each other. So people and culture. But in a bit longer expression, say we were going up a couple of floors, I would tell people I work at the intersection of helping leaders to assess their strengths, helping them to develop stronger cultures, and then help them to foster the relationships and communicate better, which leads to not just personal transformation, but professional transformation as well.
Okay, awesome, man. Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's an incredible and necessary work that must be continue to be done. Tell us now, before you got into this space as a people and personnel strategist, tell us about the previous industry that you were in prior to the marketplace.
Yeah, so I had some waves in my career, and I'm getting to the place where I'm like backtracking. I feel in some ways, man, I've lived several lifetimes. So like I first started off, and when we met in graduate school, it was I was actually working on my second graduate degree while teaching. I was teaching communication courses. So introduction to public communication. I was teaching
Mhm.
public speaking, interpersonal communication, business communication. And for several years, for almost a decade, about 8.5 years or 8 years in a semester, I was teaching those courses. And then, switching, going to seminary, doing theological studies, and started a career as a pastor, which coincidentally my pastoral career and my phase of life as a professional speaker, trainer, coach started at the same time. So I was a full-time pastor and then started to dabble into what professional development looked like. And going from higher ed and teaching students in the classroom to congregational leadership, I will tell you, man, theologically I might have been prepared, but from like a practical perspective, nah. Not at all. Not at all.
Man, nah, and with myself still being in the congregational sector, the pastor, it's still I can relate, definitely relate to that reality, as it's almost been 10 years for me in the space of the pastorate as well. So no,
Mhm.
awesome, awesome, awesome to hear that. Now, as you have, so you have quite a bit of experience and exposure to the possible exposure or access points to burnout
Mhm.
in your previous lives, if you will. Were there any points where you encountered or you collided with burnout?
Man, so woo, I would say as a pastor, and you know this, you're still living some aspect of this, from
Mhm.
day to day. as a pastor, the thing about Bible college or seminary, theological studies, whatever you go through, for the most part, the emphasis is on doctrine, theology, the systems of teaching that you are to impart to your congregation as a congregational leader, as a local church pastor. I don't remember a lot, and we took the same classes. I remember taking one pastoral counseling course. I remember taking one course on church leadership and administration in I think 90 credits or something that I had to do. Maybe 3 or 4 courses on what it's like to actually lead and guide and direct and be with the people of the church. 80% on theology, maybe 10% on administration or culture of our particular denominational structure, but nothing that really put me in a good position to wrestle with and deal with being with people. I was leveraging a lot of my communication degree with that, but then that had its shortcomings as well because it wasn't designed for congregational leaders. I think one of the biggest pieces for me dealing with burnout is mismanaged expectations. I think that's one of the, leaders from all walks of life deal with that. You have so many competing voices. And in many cases, especially if you're in a smaller context, you are trying to be all things to all people. So you're the pastor, but you're the part-time janitor, and you type up the service announcements, and you check on, the church, and you open the doors, and you vacuum the worship space, and someone's in the hospital, and you have all of these things coming at you and all of these expectations and demands. And then there are the organizational pieces where whatever your denominational structure, the executives or leaders, they have their set of expectations for you and goals that they want you to meet. And then above all of that is your family, and then your personal spirituality journey, and all of these kind of tugs and pulls. And there are several times where I'm just like, I don't know what to do with all of these expectations. So many people want so many different things and so many critiques, and you should be doing that, and I wish you would do this. And it for me, the physical or visible manifestation of my burnout was a supreme sense of irritability. I just became irritated at everything, irritated at phone calls, irritated going to meetings. I'd be irritated driving to the hospital to visit people and have to try to shake it off so I could go through that pastoral visit, only to get in my car and be irritated on the way home. So I dealt with just the severe irritation at everything, became hypercritical of everything. And it was really rooted in that feelings of burnout that came from mismanaged expectations.
Okay. Man, no, that's so rich. And those that are watching the replay of this will definitely, those that are in the pastorate, you may not be able to type in the comment section because you don't know if some of your parishioners are on LinkedIn or on YouTube, but you can definitely resonate with what he has shared. Pierre Quinn has shared just with us about the mismanaged expectations as it related to the pastorate. Now, I just want to ask just a follow-up question regarding your burnout experience and mismanaged expectations. When did you come to the point of recognizing that that's what it was in the pastoral experience?
When I started to see a trend of asking other colleagues what they did for break or rest or vacation or hobbies. And the consistent thread across the board was that for most of the people I had been engaging, they did not take breaks or time off to recoup. And in some ways, to be perfectly honest, it felt like, to me at least, there was some guilt involved, some social guilt involved, because as a pastor, you're taught you have to be on. That was another piece of it, of the mismanaged expectations. You were taught that you have to be on 24/7, and sometimes members make it seem like if you're not doing things that they can see, that you're not doing your job. So you would have things like members
Yeah.
calling you at 1 p.m. in the afternoon saying, "Oh, Pastor, did I wake you? It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you mean? Did you wake me? Are you insinuating because I'm not in my office typing away at a sermon? I'm not doing my job." That whole expectation thing again. So I was talking to a lot of colleagues and they would say, "I don't really take breaks. I don't really take time off. I don't really take weekends away from my church to breathe and to do something different." And I found
Wow.
a correlation between people who would say that and their hypercritical nature, disposition, being irritable as well. And I came to the conclusion, wait, if none of us are taking breaks, if we always have to feel like we're on,
Yeah.
and even just the thinking about the work
Yeah.
is daunting, then I said, this has got to be something. And I remember taking a trip to go visit a friend,
Okay.
and I remember it was the first time in a long time that I had just taken a break and not preached on the weekend, not doing anything church related. And I said to myself, wow, that feels different. I can go to church and not have to be on, and I
Yeah.
can sit
Yeah.
in the back, and
Yeah.
in the after the service is over, I don't have to stand there for 2 hours and talk to people and pour into people and have them dump the challenges of life on. I mean, that's part of the job. That's what you do.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
to do that week after week after week after week after week without a break, without talking to a therapist, without having a hobby, without having a release valve, I think for me accelerated the time in which I felt like I was burnt out. And I felt guilty about taking breaks. And it was only after I started to take breaks that I saw, okay, if I don't take breaks, then I'm going to get to that red line really quickly, and then things will look very bad at that point. So I noticed when I would take some time off for myself that those feelings would dissipate. And I said, okay, this has got to be a thing here.
Wow, man, you've said a lot. You've said a whole lot, and one of the salient points of the many that you mentioned in what you just shared is because the work of the pastorate particularly is so mind oriented, right? A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
work is mental. People aren't going to necessarily see all of it on paper, and when it does come on paper, it's going to be significantly less than all of the mental work that I was actually doing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so not being able to always translate what the work that was done to what can actually be tangible and seen can be challenging, particularly within depending on the demographics of the congregation
Mm-hmm.
that you serve in. No, man, that's an incredible piece that I hope those that are listening are really caught on to. And what you're saying is just really apropos to what we are seeing as a repeated headline as it relates to the Olympics, um,
Mm-hmm.
and those that are in the high stress professions,
Yeah.
high stress industries, kind of always being on and needing to be right all the time, whenever called upon, and just kind of all of those. Not missing a beat, so on and so forth, and just this, I kind of would classify this as a unbendable toughness,
Mm-hmm.
an unbendable
Yeah.
toughness that's absolutely required. And obviously, while for athletes and pastors, it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that surrounds the different industries, I find to be relatively or loosely relatively comparable. And as you said,
Yeah.
there's this overemphasis on toughness and a neglect of temperance.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so, one of the things that I've heard people comment about, and you mentioned that members even say, it's like, well, you got to be tough. You got to be there. You need to be present. And whenever toughness is overemphasized and temperance is neglected, you're going to always run into burnout, right?
I love that.
You're going to always run into burnout because they're meant to be held in tension, right? Life won't allow us to just get away from what's tough, right? But at the same time, if we neglect the other pieces of rest, balance, uh, saying no and boundaries that are also necessary to holding toughness in reign, so to speak, and preventing it from becoming a wild stallion. Then we run into those things, man. So your story, your testimony of what you shared and your experience, I know is helping someone that is listening, that's listening to this right now, decipher and recognize even the own trends in their life. Hey, you haven't talked to somebody about this, but hey, Pierre is sharing with you what he's gathered from his own experience and his reflection, his time of reflection and rest. That can also be beneficial to you. I want to pivot here. So you've done the pastorate, but now you're a consultant, you're a coach, you're a public speaker, an emerging a leader in the leadership topic area. Tell me how you are seeing this this reality of burnout play out in your work as a consultant and also in the clients that you work with.
Yeah, man. So there's this thing about the pastorate, and there is in the fraternity of the pastorate, in the fraternity of pastoral ministry, there are some unwritten rules, some unwritten maxims.
Yes, sir.
And some of the unwritten maxims are: be careful who you talk to. Be careful who you talk to, because at least in our denominational construct, the number of what we consider headliner, highlight, top tier opportunities is severely limited. And these are spaces where the congregation size is at a certain number, the resources size, the income level of the church, the location of the church. It's only a handful of places like that where you can pastor based on our construct, our current construct. So there is this unwritten, almost vying for position that happens. And the unwritten rule is be careful, because depending on who you talk to and who you share with and who you open your heart to, that conversation may come back to bite you when it's time to consider you from one of these headlining positions. I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you about what I experienced.
Yes, sir.
And it breeds a sense of, even as a congregational leader, feeling like I can't talk to anyone because of where I sit in the organization. So if you move to the marketplace, I've worked with so many leaders and teams and executives who feel that because of my place, because of my role, because of my rank, where my office sits, how much money I make, the impact I have on the organization, I'm not quite sure who I can talk to. I'm not quite sure who I can trust. I'm not quite sure that if I don't hold up this sense of 24/7 resilience and strength, and I show humanness, or I show maybe some uneasiness or vulnerability, if I will be able to retain my position or the regard that I've created or even had bestowed upon me. So there is a hesitancy, especially at the executive level, even amongst other executives, even if you're coming from different organizations, to talk through. And one of the biggest contributors to the burnout scenario is keeping everything inside, not having a release valve, not having a safe space, a psychologically safe space where you can talk through some of these challenges. And doesn't even necessarily have to be a traditionally therapeutic setting like a counselor. Just having a mastermind group or a peer group or people just to talk through stuff with. At the executive level, there is a fear that if I'm honest about my workload and my challenges and my uncertainties, I may lose what I work so hard to gain. And I would rather just work myself to the bone.
Yeah.
Even though we're bringing in the last few years, burnout and recovery, psychological safety, workplace resilience, emotional intelligence, even though these in the last, I would say 5 or 10 years have made their way into executive conversations and discussions, there are still generations of people who say, no, you just work hard. You don't say anything.
That's exactly right.
You do whatever you need to do to succeed, to win.
That's right.
even if it means your physical and emotional deterioration. So there are a lot of parallels, man. And I've been able to really have some of the using the pastoral counseling, knowing head and heart of people paradigm I learned in pastoral ministry, to be a chaplain in the marketplace in some sense, to really speak to the heads and hearts of some of these leaders who are going through similar things that the people who in congregational leadership experience as well.
Wow, man, that's tremendous. And I think as you're sharing that and articulating that, just get the sense that we're human. Like
Yeah.
that, it goes without saying, obviously, but that no matter what industry you switch to, you're going to see some of the same realities that are presented in different forms and may have different clothes on, so to speak. But it's the realities of working through and resolving challenges as humans
Yeah.
that even executives deal with. Yeah.
Vic, I want to add something to that because you just prompted a thought in my mind, something that I assumed that would happen and that we assume would happen often.
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that once I left one congregational context, I was leading 3 churches in an aggregate of maybe 100 to
Mm-hmm.
moving to a church of nearly 700 members,
Mm-hmm.
400 in attendance, X, Y, and Z. It was one of those, prominent places that I talked about earlier in our conversation, one of those prized
Absolutely.
assignments. I thought that just because I was switching environments in a certain level, then my burnout experience would be different. I assumed, and that I think that's what a lot of us do. I
Yes, sir.
assumed just because I changed jobs, oh, it's just the company. It's
Absolutely.
just the industry.
Absolutely.
Nah. If me, just internally, and I'm not going on that journey of self-discovery and self-reflection to figure out what my triggers are, especially my burnout triggers, then I'm just going to repeat the cycle every 3 or 4 years, no matter what job or what industry that I'm in.
You're saying it. You're saying it very professionally, and I'm just going to put it out there. It's you. It's you. And
Yeah.
now, I mean, obviously, there's study, and I don't want to take this lightly, but there's study that also points to the role that employers and organizations
Yeah.
have
Oh yeah.
in shaping the culture
Oh yeah.
to remove the sense of burnout, the necessity to keep up at a burnout pace. There's definitely the role that the organization plays, but there's an onus, there's a responsibility, there's an agency
Yeah.
that you as the individual have to do your own soul work, man. And like you said, if you move locations, you thought that it was the spot that you were at or the position that you had. If I could only get the promotion, then this would go away. It follows you.
Oh man.
It follows you, man. No, you're you're nailing it right now because it absolutely does follow you. And so, again, whatever industry you're in, whether you are in the executive or you're in the pastorate or some other area, if you're continuing to try to sweep this under the rug, there's no shame. There's a sense of stigma around it, acknowledging that you have stress or that you've allowed stress to overwhelm you. But again, that's part of the recovery. That's part of the muscle. That's part of the flexing of the muscle when you can acknowledge that, hey, I've got to fine tune this muscle strength in order to become stronger at utilizing it in order to live my best self. To live my best self, man. Now that's an incredible insight. I'm glad you definitely shared that piece with us. In cases of executives, is it something that you've had to I don't want to say force them to acknowledge, or have you seen cases where they've been in denial about this?
No, usually by the time an organization works with me, there is a
Mm-hmm.
general acceptance because
Okay.
if you look at the bio or the LinkedIn or the website or whatever it is, however you get wind of the work that I do, you
Yep.
know what I'm coming with. You know what I'm going to talk about. You already know. You already know. For me, leadership is head and heart work. That's why the logo for my speaking brand is my it's my initials. It's a P and a Q, but it's also conversation bubbles. Because for
Yeah. I
me,
love it, man. I
you know,
absolutely love it.
great leadership is one of the pillars of great leadership is the ability to have tough conversations and to facilitate great conversations. So by the time an organization brings me in, they already know, okay, he's going to prompt tough conversations, and I need to be ready to lean into or go on this journey. So
Awesome.
if and it when you're doing the field the intro calls, the fielding a potential client that we talked about before, I
Yeah.
ask some of those preemptive questions to know, hey, is this going to be a good fit? Because when I come in to work with you or come in to work with the team, we're going to go there. It's not just head work in my leadership development framework, it's heart work as well. And some of the heart work deals with the fact that, man, I am feeling X, Y, and Z because of A, B, and C. And burnout is usually a part of that conversation in some ways. We're not expert level on burnout like you are, but we do prompt the conversation.
No, awesome. No, that's encouraging to hear that people are, I think, in this season, along with, um, among other things, they're being encouraged to acknowledge that, hey,
Yeah.
it's something isn't right. Something must change. It can't continue to. My cheese got moved, and I've got to move too.
Man, what's interesting about it is when you look at workplace dynamics and when you look at organizational development,
Mhm.
and much like our families, there is this family systems model, this corporate family systems not model, this kind of paradigm, but the same modalities we use in family therapy, we use them when we're working in corporate environments, organizational cultures. And a lot of times, and I know it's easier for me to come in as a facilitator, as an outside conversation starter, and I love partnering with organizations to do this work because sometimes the executive is not in the place they're too close. They're not in the
Absolutely,
place to have the conversations. And people
absolutely.
ask us, right? Do we really like, do we really have to pay you that much to do this?
Right.
And yeah, because the impact, there will be something
Absolutely.
that we say in this session, 30, 45 minutes, 3 hours, full day, that because of a shift in perspective or deeper understanding, the productivity level of a person, the engagement. I mean, we're talking about the impact of potentially hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars
Mhm.
based on what we go through and do as facilitators and coaches and speakers. So the small amount that you invest in having us work with you to reap such incredible dividends, from an investment perspective, is so well worth it. Now, I say that because in many cases, and leaders, I need you to hear me on this. In many cases, your people don't want you to solve their problems.
Mhm.
In many cases, they don't want you to solve their problems. They just want you to hold space for them to be able to share without without retribution, without ridicule, without criticism. Hold space for them to share what they're thinking about and what they're going through. And when people feel like they've been heard, not asking you as my leader to solve my problems, but when I feel like that I've been heard and respected and engaged, then that allows me to trust you even more and allows me that, just for many of us, just that little release valve that I needed so I can continue to do the work. So how do we as leaders hold space? Because as we mentioned before, holding it everything on the inside is a quick way to get to that red line and start having those experiences of burnout in different ways.
Man, now that's incredible. That's incredible. One of the, as you were sharing, more of your heart, your head and heart framework for facilitating those crucial and potent conversations. I was thinking about one of the triggers that I really encourage clients to explore, and that's unstable connections.
Hmm.
And so those unstable connections can be revealed in workplace settings and can be revealed in family relationships, can be revealed in friendships, and in the way that that you lose strength in your signal while you're on your cell phone, depending on where you go. The same reality can happen within relationships and interactions with one another, man. And so to hear you articulate the depths of how that unfolds in the day-to-day experience between leaders and those that are a part of the team is incredible, because you're absolutely right. The work is both head and heart.
Mm-hmm.
Work is both head and heart. No, this has been absolutely incredible, man. Just before I let you go, I know we'll have to at some point come back and do a part two. Have to do a part two, man. But for those that are listening that want to be able to connect with you, to learn more about your leadership framework and coming alongside and partnering with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, man, my social media platform of choice these days is LinkedIn. So just hop on LinkedIn and type in Pierre Quinn, and you'll see my face there. My youngest daughter is encouraging me to hop on TikTok. She's coaching me through it. We're not there yet. All right. So we're on LinkedIn for now. That's where we're hanging out. Pierre Quinn on LinkedIn. That's probably the second best place to connect with me. The first is on my website, pierrequinn.com. That's pierrequinn.com.
Awesome. Pierre, it has been a joy to have you on, man. And we thank you again for joining us. Again, you want to connect with Pierre if you or your leadership team is in need of those crucial and those potent conversations about the connection between the head and the heart for productivity and effectiveness. Again, you can find him on his website, pierrequinn.com. And you can also check him out on LinkedIn and in searching Pierre Quinn. Pierre, thank you again for this conversation, man, and about burnout. Again, we want to also thank each of you that have joined us for our latest conversation on burnout and beyond. We encourage you to not keep silent, but to address the burnout that you may be on the verge of experiencing, or you may already be in the throes of already. But know that you don't have to stay there. But burnout is an invitation to begin again. Peace out.